Why did no one move when the slap echoed through the dining hall? Maybe because, deep down, everyone sensed something they couldn't explain, that this moment, this single blow, wasn't the end of anything, but the beginning. She didn't flinch. Lieutenant Alina Rodriguez stood there, the red mark on her cheek blooming like a warning flare. Her tablet lay cracked on the floor. The Admiral towered over her, his shadow swallowing her tray, her chair, her silence. 300 sailors froze mid-motion, forks suspended, words stuck in throats, hearts beating too loudly in chests. She bent down slowly, calmly, and retrieved the broken device. And she walked out. Not fast, not shaken, not angry, just steady. The kind of steady that comes from someone who has trained themselves to survive fires hotter than humiliation. People whispered later that her calm meant fear. But it wasn't fear. It was calculation. 6 hours earlier, she had woken at 400 because that was what her body did on its own. A machine built from years of necessity and routine. She lived in a small room with no photos, no decorations, no sentimental traces of a life outside the uniform. Everything she owned had a purpose. Everything was placed with precision. Everything reflected who she had become after her parents' accident, and after the Navy found a brilliant, quiet engineering prodigy with nowhere else to go. Her shower lasted 5 minutes. Her breakfast lasted 3. She didn't let her thoughts wander. She didn't allow memories to creep in. Not this early, not when clarity mattered. By 4:55, she was in the restricted West Wing, the hallway few people on base even knew existed. A palm scanner, a retinal confirmation, a door like a vault opening with a hiss, and then she stepped inside the world no one talked about. Task Force Phoenix. Senior Chief Lawson didn't even look up when she entered. Morning, Ellie. She didn't correct the nickname. Lawson was the only one allowed to use it. Colonel Mitchell's office door slid open with its usual hydraulic sigh. The old spymaster leaned back in his chair, lines carved deep around his eyes, lines earned not from age, but from Cold War winters and listening posts and secrets buried under a lifetime of silence. "You look like you slept 4 hours and 20 minutes, he said, glancing at her posture. "I did, sir." He snorted. "You're still tracking sleep to the minute. That's unhealthy, Alina. Optimal efficiency requires—" I know, efficiency." He pushed a datapad toward her. "We intercepted something. Chinese frequency hopping pattern, not random. I want your eyes on it." 15 seconds. That's how long it took her to see what their computers had taken hours to decode. Jupiter's moons, orbital ratios, astronomical constants hidden inside the encryption. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was where the signal came from. "Origin point," she said slowly, "is inside this base." Mitchell's expression hardened. "That means someone's transmitting intelligence right under our noses." She nodded. "And Alina, Thornton is touring the base today." Her jaw tightened before she could stop it. She hated that. She hated that he could still provoke anything in her. 3 years ago, he dismissed her security report publicly, calling it technical paranoia. 2 months later, foreign intelligence exploited the exact weakness she warned about. But she didn't mention that. She didn't need to. Mitchell already knew. "Document everything," he reminded her. "Patience. We don't strike first. We wait for the truth to expose itself." She almost smiled at that, almost, because she remembered the story he'd told her about spectral documentation, about letting a spy reveal their entire network before closing the net. She had learned well. By midday, she had already swept half the base using the modified scanner hidden inside her tablet. Nothing, not even a whisper of the signal, but she didn't rush. She didn't get frustrated. She didn't fall into the trap of certainty. She moved like a chess piece, deliberate, quiet, unremarkable. At 12:45, she took a seat in the dining facility, neutral zone, central coverage, maximum scanning radius. Her tray was arranged neatly, her back straight, her eyes on the cascading spectrum data. She barely tasted the food. Her world narrowed to peaks, dips, frequencies, patterns. She was so focused that she didn't register the change around her. She didn't notice the air tightening, the laughter dying, the uneasy glances. She only heard the soft ping. The signal was back. Her pulse quickened, not fear, not excitement, but alignment. She began triangulating rapidly. Senior officer section, strong encryption, increasing intensity. Someone was sending something large, critical, urgent. 3 more seconds. Just 3. Lieutenant. She looked up half a second only, and saw Vice Admiral James Thornton looming over her like a storm cloud. He wanted a reaction. He needed it. She didn't give it to him. Signal analysis in progress, sir. Time sensitive. His face flushed. His hand swept across the table, knocking her tablet away. It hit the floor. He mocked her. He belittled her. He made the moment public, performative, designed to remind everyone of his power and her place. But Alina Rodriguez didn't rise. She didn't break protocol. She didn't betray a single flicker of anger. Her heartbeat stayed steady, her breathing controlled. He demanded she stand. She asked for her device. He demanded obedience. She insisted calmly, respectfully, that her work was critical. That was when he snapped. The slap echoed. His West Point ring caught the light exactly the way her glasses, bodycam recorded. Exactly the way she documented in her mind. Angle. Force. Witnesses, 293. Time on the wall clock, 12:47:32. 5 seconds of silence followed. Then she picked up her tablet and left. She didn't look back, but she heard him trying to reassert control behind her. The fragility of it, the desperation. When she reached the secure wing, Mitchell was already standing. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gasp. He simply looked at her cheek, already reddening, and said with frightening calm, "Thornton." She nodded, but she didn't talk about the slap. She talked about the signal. Because the transmission spike, the espionage was the part that mattered. She placed the cracked tablet on the desk. "The device has everything recorded, sir, the entire sequence." Lawson muttered a curse under his breath as he connected it to the backup system. The footage showed everything. Every angle. Every word. Every second of the Admiral's outburst. Mitchell watched silently. His jaw tightened. His fingers drummed once sharply on the desk. "Perfect chain of evidence," he murmured. "But you're right, the signal matters more." She nodded. Someone used the Admiral as a distraction. Mitchell's eyes hardened. And for the first time since leaving the dining hall, Alina let herself feel something. Not pain. Not humiliation. Not anger. But clarity. This wasn't about a slap. This was about a spy. This was about patience. This was about timing. She had waited calmly when the hand struck her. But the system would not stay calm. And she was trained to let it correct itself with precision, with evidence, and eventually, with consequences. Why did the Admiral's hands tremble when he held the Red Force file the next morning? Because for the first time in decades, James Thornton sensed a battle he couldn't fight with rank, reputation, or rage. 2 days had passed since the slap. The bruise on Alina's cheek had faded, but the memory hadn't. Not for her. Not for the 300 sailors who witnessed it. Not for the Admiral who tried to pretend it was discipline instead of desperation. But she didn't think about the humiliation. She thought about the signal. A Chinese frequency-hopping pattern. A mole on base. A leak timed suspiciously with the Admiral's outburst. And now something bigger. Task Force Phoenix had traced a second transmission, rooted somewhere deeper, somewhere more dangerous. The pieces were shifting, the shadows thickening, and Alina understood one truth: the real threat hadn't shown itself yet. At 700, she was back in the Phoenix Command Center, her movements precise, controlled, her breathing steady. But Mitchell was watching her with the old man's version of concern, subtle, hidden beneath gruff silence. "You slept 2 hours," he said finally. "I slept 4. "You closed your eyes for 4, he corrected. "Not the same thing." She didn't respond. He knew better than to push. He'd recruited her because she didn't break under pressure, she dissolved into focus. Lawson entered with 2 coffees and a scowl. "Admiral Thornton is requesting a briefing, something about Exercise Trident." Alina looked up. Trident, the Navy's largest electronic warfare readiness test. A full carrier strike group. Blue Force versus Red Force. Old doctrine versus the future. And Red Force had just been assigned. To her. Mitchell slid a new tablet toward her, clean, uncracked, upgraded, recording to 3 encrypted servers. "You'll lead the op," he said. "Congratulations and condolences." She blinked, the closest she ever came to showing surprise. "Sir, Red Force, against a carrier group." "You're not attacking the ships," he said calmly. "You're attacking the assumptions of every officer on them." Lawson added, "And rumor is, the Admiral doesn't know who he's up against yet." Of course he didn't. The universe had a twisted sense of symmetry. The next morning, the Pacific sparkled like a sheet of glass as the USS Vigilance, Thornton's flagship, sliced through the waves. He stood at the bridge, hands clasped behind him, projecting power, authority, the old-school confidence of a surface warfare officer who believed steel and sailors still ruled the sea. His aide, Commander Hayes, approached with a folder. "Sir, final Red Force assignment is confirmed." Thornton opened the file. He stopped breathing for 3 seconds. "Lieutenant Alina Rodriguez, Electronic Warfare Specialist, Task Force Phoenix." The woman he struck. The officer he dismissed. The threat he underestimated. "Impossible," he murmured. Hayes cleared his throat. "Sir, she's top in the field, rumored to have shut down an air defense network overseas." "Rumors," Thornton snapped, but something inside him wavered, a fault line forming. He stared at Alina's picture, that calm, unreadable face. There was something in her eyes he hadn't noticed before. Not softness. Not fear. A depth. A calculation. A silence that felt dangerous. Meanwhile, 73 miles away, Alina sat cross-legged inside the USNS Shadow Basin, a repurposed fishing vessel filled with equipment no fishing boat should ever contain. Her hands flew across controls with the unbroken rhythm of someone who didn't just understand systems. She understood how people trusted those systems. Mitchell watched from the doorway. "You're not nervous." "Nervousness is a response to uncertainty," she murmured. "This system is predictable." He smirked faintly. "Thornton." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Everyone knew the Admiral's biggest vulnerability wasn't enemy ships. It was his certainty. Lawson pointed at her screen. "They're spinning up full Aegis operations. Radar lit up like a Christmas tree." Of course they were. Thornton believed in visibility, in raw power, in the arrogance of naval superiority. Alina murmured, almost to herself, "Perfect." Her strategy wasn't to attack his systems. It was to let his systems attack themselves. Dawn broke over the ocean like a flare. On the Vigilance's Combat Direction Center, sailors filled consoles, radars hummed, algorithms synchronized. Exercise Trident begins in 5 minutes. Thornton felt a familiar swell of pride. Activate full search patterns, find them fast. His officers nodded, confident, loyal, predictable. He didn't know Alina was sitting calmly beside a cluster of custom devices, listening, waiting, mapping every whisper of energy the strike group emitted. For 20 minutes she did nothing. No jamming. No intrusion. No interference. Just listening. Mitchell leaned down. Phase 1. She nodded. They're looking outward for threats, but threats are almost always inward. He smiled at that. Her clarity reminded him of how she'd been when he first met her, a quiet MIT student haunted by grief, brilliant enough to drown in it, patient enough to weaponize it. She understood pressure. She understood loss. She understood silence. And silence was a devastating tactic. 40 minutes in, a faint anomaly appeared on the USS Gettysburg's radar. Sectors showing a small vessel, an operator reported. Thornton exhaled sharply, finally. He ordered the USS Mason to intercept. But Alina wasn't celebrating. She was adjusting patterns, shaping signals, feeding the Aegis system exactly what it expected to see. "They're committing to the Phantom," she murmured. "Good." Mitchell nodded. "They'll chase your ghost until they overextend." And they did. For the next hour, Blue Force chased shadows, radar returns that appeared and vanished, sonar echoes that multiplied without explanation. Each discrepancy forced the Aegis system to correct itself. And with every correction, Alina shaped its perception. Thornton's frustration grew. He slammed a fist onto the console. "Why can't we find them?" Hayes whispered, "Sir, this may be advanced deception." "Impossible," Thornton snapped. "Our systems are untouchable." But they were. Not today. Not against her. In the observation room, Admiral Winters watched calmly, her mind racing. She saw what Thornton couldn't: the elegance, the patience, the psychological manipulation woven into every false contact Blue Force chased. "This isn't an attack," she murmured. "This is a mirror." Her aide frowned. "A mirror." A mirror showing them how much they rely on what they think they see. Back on the Shadow Basin, Alina's eyes remained fixed on the growing chaos. "Phase 3 complete," she said softly. "Their tactical picture is fragmented beyond repair." Mitchell leaned closer. "Time for the kill stroke." "Not yet." "They're a spike." Commander Hayes. Accessing a vulnerability she planted. Testing it. Thinking she wouldn't notice. Mitchell whispered, "He's the mole." "Alina, we have him." She nodded once calmly. But she didn't strike yet. Patience. Documentation. Timing. She let the chaos build. She let the strike group panic. She let Thornton cling to control that no longer existed. Until Blue Force's combat systems were begging for unity, for someone, anyone, to make sense of the noise. Thornton made the call she predicted hours earlier. Synchronize all Aegis systems to the vigilance, centralize control. And in that moment, that single fragile moment, Alina struck. Not loudly. Not violently. Not with explosions or alarms. But with a whisper. A shift. A cascade. The tactical display collapsed into chaos. Hundreds of phantom missiles. Impossible aircraft vectors. Submarines rising where ocean depths were thousands of meters. A battlefield of illusions, so convincing even pilots couldn't tell what was real. Thornton stared at the screens, horror dawning. What is this?" On the Shadow Basin, Alina whispered the answer he would never forget. "The truth." Why did the combat center fall silent the moment every screen went black? Because even the most battle-tested officers know one universal truth: predators roar, but only real danger arrives quietly. The tactical displays on the USS Vigilance blinked, flickered, then died. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. No one spoke. Then the screen surged back to life, only now they displayed chaos. Multiple missile contacts, unknown aircraft approaching, submarine directly underneath us. New vectors, dozens, no hundreds. Officers shouted, sweat forming at their temples, not because they were under attack, but because they couldn't tell if they were. Vice Admiral Thornton felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. For a moment he could only stare. The tactical picture made no sense. The Aegis system, his pride, his certainty, was vomiting threats from every direction. Impossible threats, overlapping signals, velocity inconsistencies, conflicting data feeds. Verify with visual, he barked. Sir, visual confirms nothing, an officer replied, voice trembling. The sky is clear. Another shouted, but the radar shows. I don't care what the radar shows, look with your eyes. And that was the moment the realization struck him like the force of a breaking wave. His systems weren't being shut down. They weren't being jammed. They were being made to lie. Meanwhile, aboard the Shadow Basin, Elena Rodriguez remained perfectly calm. Her breathing slow, her pulse steady, her hands still and deliberate. She watched the cascading data as if examining a piece of art. Mitchell stood behind her, the faintest hint of awe in his eyes. Not pride, something deeper, something older, recognition of a master at work. You broke them, he said quietly. No, she answered, eyes never leaving the screen. They broke themselves. Lawson let out a low whistle. Cold, true, but cold. Elena didn't blink. They trusted their systems more than their judgment, so I gave their systems something to trust. Mitchell exhaled. You know, when I found you years back, I wondered if you'd ever learn what patience means in this field. Now I see you learned it better than I ever did. She paused, just for a fraction of a second. I had good teachers. But her voice was distant. Her mind was elsewhere. Tracking someone. On the Vigilance, Thornton slammed a hand onto the console. This is impossible. No single vessel can manipulate an entire carrier strike group. Hayes stepped closer, calm, too calm. Sir, perhaps we should consider that our systems have been compromised internally. Thornton rounded on him. Enough. I won't entertain fantasies about omnipotent hackers. But Hayes wasn't watching him. He was watching the screens. Watching the spreading chaos. The same chaos Elena had predicted he would try to exploit. And he made his move. Not loudly. Not rashly. Quietly. He opened a concealed panel on his console. Typed a sequence with practiced precision. Accessed the encryption vulnerability Elena planted, assuming she planted it incorrectly, not realizing it was a trap. And then, Elena caught him. Back aboard the Shadow Basin, her screen blinked, softly, almost politely. Commander Hayes has engaged, she said. Mitchell leaned forward, confirmed. Yes, she replied, and he just activated a secondary channel, transmitting tactical data to an external server. Lawson's mouth tightened. That snake. Elena's eyes hardened, but her voice remained steady. He's not the snake, she said. He's the handler. Mitchell froze, meaning. She brought up the network trace, a web of connections. Command nodes. Encrypted packets. Foreign relays. Then she showed them the first destination. Senator Blackwood's office. Lawson swore loudly. Mitchell's expression went still, winter cold. This goes much higher than Hayes. Much deeper, Elena corrected softly. She isolated the signal's final endpoint. A server near the South China Sea. Mitchell inhaled sharply. You just uncovered a direct intelligence pipeline into U.S. Strategic Command. Elena nodded once. And I have every packet logged. Mitchell whispered something she rarely heard from him, something that meant more than any medal or promotion. Well done. But she didn't smile. The mission wasn't over. Not until she delivered the truth where it mattered most. Back on the Vigilance, Thornton felt helpless for the first time in his career. His systems weren't responding to logic. His officers couldn't stabilize the picture. His pilots were reporting no visual threats, but the Aegis display showed imminent annihilation. And in his ear, Admiral Winter's voice cut through the noise. Vice Admiral Thornton, exercise Trident is terminated. Red Force victory declared. Her tone contained no mockery, no condescension, only finality. Stand down immediately. Thornton stared, breath caught in his throat. Destroyed. Every ship, every aircraft, every defense. In simulation, yes, but painfully real where it mattered, in pride, doctrine, and truth. He felt the weight of everything he'd dismissed, everything he'd minimized, everything he'd never understood. And then something even worse settled into his gut. Elena Rodriguez didn't win because she was a technician. She won because she saw the battlefield as it actually was, while he saw it as he wanted it to be. The debrief room was silent when he entered, flanked by senior officers who avoided eye contact. He saw Winters standing at the front. He saw the display looping the collapse of the strike group. And he saw her. Elena. Straight-backed. Expression unreadable. Hands clasped behind her, posture disciplined, calm. A faint mark lingered on the cheek he had struck, not enough to draw attention, not enough to blame, just enough to remind him. A scar he gave her. A scar she returned, without raising a hand. Winters began. Lieutenant Rodriguez, please explain your methodology. Elena stepped forward. No theatrics. No pride. Just clarity. She explained how she exploited 3 weaknesses. The Navy's trust in sensor data, the self-correcting algorithms, and the predictable human response to uncertainty. She explained the patient buildup, the cascading errors, the trap Thornton walked into. Thornton listened, feeling something break and rebuild inside him all at once. By the time she finished, the room wasn't silent because of shock. It was silent because she had changed everything. Then Winters said quietly, "Commander Hayes, please surrender your weapon." Hayes froze, Thornton stiffened. "What?" he whispered. Elena brought up the trace. The transmissions. The encryption. The senator's involvement. The betrayal. Thornton felt the floor tilt beneath him. Hayes, his trusted aide, had been selling them out. And he had been too blind to see it. When the MPs arrived and Hayes was led away, Elena didn't look triumphant. She looked steady, centered, patient, unshaken, like someone who had expected this moment for a long time. Thornton swallowed hard. "I've been a fool." Mitchell answered for her. "You've been unprepared, that's different." But when Thornton looked at Elena, something inside him shifted. His arrogance, his assumptions, his certainty. He saw someone he had never truly seen before. Someone he underestimated. Someone he struck. Someone who saved him anyway. Because that was her job. Because that was her duty. Because that was who she was when no one was watching. And for the first time in years, Thornton felt humbled. Why did the Admiral request a private meeting with the woman he once humiliated? Because every man reaches a moment when ego collapses, and only truth remains. Hours after Hayes was escorted off the ship in handcuffs, a strange quiet fell over the Vigilance. It wasn't the quiet of fear or shame. It was the quiet of realization, the kind that settles over people when the ground beneath them shifts, and they finally understand it was unstable all along. Elena walked the passageway alone, her footsteps soft, her tablet tucked under one arm. Sailors moved aside without being told, not because she demanded it, but because they saw something differently now. Respect, yes, but something more, something deeper. A word they rarely used for someone outside the chain of command. Dependable. She didn't notice the looks. She didn't hear the whispers. She was still replaying the network traces in her mind, tracking every packet Hayes sent, every relay that bounced the signal overseas. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something bigger, something underneath. Her thoughts were interrupted when Winters appeared. "Lieutenant, the Admiral asked to see you." Elena blinked once, almost imperceptibly. "Vice Admiral Thornton." "Yes, alone." A pause, not in hesitation, but in curiosity. She nodded. Winters held her gaze for a moment. "You don't have to go if you're uncomfortable." "I'm not," Elena said softly. "It doesn't matter." Winters looked at her with an expression Elena didn't see often, concern. Genuine, human concern. Then she gestured toward the wardroom. The Admiral was waiting. Inside the wardroom, the air felt dense, heavy with whatever tension exists between two people who have shared an unforgivable moment. A moment one regrets, and the other refuses to let define them. Thornton stood when she entered. He had never stood for her before. "Elena," he began, and the use of her first name was already an apology. "Sir," she replied calmly. "Please," he said, motioning to the seat. "Thank you for coming." She sat straight-backed, composed, watchful without being defensive. He swallowed once, his voice low. "I owe you an apology." She didn't blink, she didn't nod, she didn't soften. "I know," she said simply. His jaw tightened, not in anger but in acceptance. "I was wrong," he said, each word deliberate, heavy with truth. "About you, about what you are capable of, about everything." Silence. He continued. "Your performance today, your discipline, your restraint." He exhaled, as if releasing years of arrogance. "You led a Red Force team that exposed flaws in systems I believed were invincible." Still she didn't respond. "And worse," he added quietly, "you uncovered a traitor working 2 feet away from me, a man I trusted more than my own judgment." Her voice remained steady. "Trust isn't the problem, sir. Certainty is." He stared at her, struck by the simplicity and the power of the truth. For the first time, he saw her not as a junior officer, not as a technician, not as a woman in uniform, but as a strategist, a thinker, a force shaped by patience and pain. He took a breath that trembled at the edges. "The way I treated you, the slap, it was inexcusable." She looked down, then up again, not wounded, not angry, just honest. "It was a decision," she said quietly. "You made it, I recorded it, and I moved on." He flinched because she wasn't letting him off easy, and he didn't deserve to be. "Elena, I'm sorry." This time she nodded once. "Thank you." Not forgiveness. Not closure. Just acknowledgement. Enough to let the conversation move to what mattered next. An hour later, Elena stood alone outside on the ship's open-air catwalk. The ocean stretched endlessly, shimmering in morning light. The wind tugged at her hair, cool against her skin. It should have felt peaceful. It didn't, because something didn't add up. Hayes wasn't the mastermind, he was the lever. Blackwood wasn't the strategist, he was the shield. The real architect was still invisible. And that bothered her. Deeply. Her hands gripped the railing, fingers tightening. She tried to steady her breathing, but an unease gnawed at her ribs, an instinct she learned to trust years ago. She couldn't shake the thought. If Hayes was transmitting data, then someone was receiving it. Someone powerful. Someone prepared. Someone expecting more. She looked down at the waves. "What are you seeing that we're not?" she whispered to herself. Back in her quarters, she ran scenario after scenario. Strategic models, political threads, foreign signals intelligence, historical patterns of insider compromise. The more she ran, the more one truth emerged. Hayes was the smallest piece of a much larger puzzle. And somewhere inside that puzzle was a threat that terrified her more than any weapon. A threat she had seen once before. In her previous life. Before Task Force Phoenix. Before she buried the things that broke her. Before she learned that the quietest agents often carried the deadliest secrets. A flash of memory hit her. A door kicked open in a foreign desert, screams echoing. A teammate bleeding out because someone predicted their pattern. She closed her eyes, forcing the memory back down. Not now. Not here. But something inside her whispered. It's happening again. Hours later, Winters summoned her to the briefing room. The lights were dim, screens glowing softly. The senior staff sat around the table with grim expressions. Mitchell was already there. Thornton too. And on the main screen, a new transmission. Encrypted. Untraceable. Threatening. Mitchell handed her a tablet. This came 10 minutes ago. She read the message once. Then again. The words cut through her like ice. You exposed one link, but you are too late. We are already inside your next operation. No signature. No source. Just a symbol. A black circle with a single diagonal line. Elena's heartbeat slowed. She knew that symbol. She had seen it once before. And she had buried it in the darkest corner of her memory. Her voice was barely a whisper. Shadowline. Thornton frowned. What? Winters leaned closer. Elena, what is Shadowline? She hesitated for the first time since any of them had known her. A crack, a fracture, a moment of vulnerability she couldn't hide. Shadowline, she said softly, isn't a person, it's not even a group. She looked around the table, her voice steady even as her eyes darkened. It's a doctrine. Mitchell stiffened. A doctrine. She nodded. A doctrine that uses compromised insiders not to extract intelligence, but to shape events. Thornton's face paled. Shape how? Elena swallowed. By engineering failures so precisely, no one realizes they were designed. Winters stared at her. And you've seen this before. She nodded once, the memory clawing its way back to the surface. Yes, she whispered, I survived it. The room fell silent. Not because they doubted her, but because they understood the weight of what she had just said. If Shadowline was involved, it meant Hayes wasn't the threat. He was the warning. Mitchell leaned forward. Elena, what do they want? She looked down at the glowing tablet, at the symbol that had haunted her for years. They want something bigger than intelligence. Thornton frowned. What? She lifted her gaze, eyes sharp, voice unshaking. They want to break the one thing even our enemies can't destroy. Winters whispered, and what is that? Elena exhaled slowly. Our trust in each other. Why did Elena's hands shake? Not from fear, but from memory, when she saw that symbol again. Because some ghosts don't stay buried. Some walk beside you quietly, waiting for the moment you finally look their way. Her fingers hovered over the tablet as if touching the symbol might open the past itself. Winters and Mitchell exchanged a glance, but neither interrupted. They knew better. They knew when a soldier was facing something far older than the mission. Thornton watched, uncertain, increasingly aware of how much he didn't know about the lieutenant he once dismissed. Elena, Mitchell said softly, talk to us. She inhaled slowly, training breath, grounding breath. The kind they taught operatives who lived in shadows, not offices. I joined the Navy at 20, she began, eyes fixed on the screen. But before that, I was recruited for something else. Mitchell didn't flinch. He already knew, but this was the first time she was willing to put it into words. I was part of an autonomous cyber action cell run out of an unofficial program. No patches, no records, no oversight, just 6 of us and a directive: predict threats before they happen. Winter's brow furrowed. Preemptive intelligence. No, Alina said. Predictive manipulation. The room stilled. She continued, voice low, steady, clinical, because emotion would break her if she let it seep in. We weren't analyzing threats. We were shaping them, feeding small pieces of disinformation into hostile networks, nudging outcomes, creating tension. Tiny changes, chain reactions, nothing traceable, nothing violent. A pause. Until it became violent. Mitchell closed his eyes briefly. He remembered the report, the mission that failed, the cover-up, the girl who survived when she shouldn't have. Thornton leaned forward. What does that have to do with Hayes? Shadowline took the same doctrine and evolved it, she said. Instead of shaping foreign events, they're shaping ours. Winters whispered, you mean? They're setting up failures, Alina said. Strategic, political, military, slowly, carefully, just enough to weaken trust, destabilize alliances, shift public perception. Mitchell nodded grimly. Death by 1,000 cuts. And Hayes? Thornton asked. Just one cut, Alina replied. One of many. Silence settled like fog. Then Winters broke it. Lieutenant, what did Shadowline do to you? Alina didn't answer at first. She stared at the table, eyes unfocused, lost in a memory she fought hard to bury. Finally, we were deployed to intercept a hostile cyber cell overseas. A simple extraction, a 3-person team. Her voice grew tighter. Someone predicted our movements. Someone fed our plans back to the enemy. We walked into an ambush. The room didn't move. One teammate died instantly. The other bled out in my arms. A tremor, small but real, moved through her voice. The entire operation collapsed because one person in our unit decided to trade our lives for some grand strategy. Mitchell's jaw tightened. He remembered how he found her afterwards, hollow, silent, brilliant, devastated. Alina, Winters whispered. That symbol, Alina continued, tapping the tablet, was etched into the wall of the safe house we raided. She met their eyes, not with fear, but with the quiet fury of someone who had endured betrayal once and refused to let it happen again. It means they're here, and they're not done. The next morning, Alina stood alone in the Vigilance's comms center, analyzing the Shadowline transmission. Layers of encryption, dead man relays, ghost routing. Whoever sent it was careful, too careful. Mitchell walked in. You haven't slept. She didn't look away from the data. Sleeping won't bring us answers. He sighed. You know, you remind me of myself when I was your age. No offense, sir, she murmured, but that's not comforting. He chuckled softly. Fair enough. Then he grew serious. Alina, what are you afraid of? She paused, fingers hovering over the touchscreen. Not failure, she said. I'm afraid of patterns. Patterns? She nodded. Shadowline doesn't work in lines. They work in arcs. You think you're chasing one event, but you're actually standing in the middle of a long curve bending toward something inevitable. Mitchell studied her. And you think Trident, Hayes, the slap, it's all connected. Her silence was answer enough. He exhaled slowly. Then we need a map, not of what happened, but why. She finally turned to him. And we need to find the next strike before they make it look like an accident. By midday, the task force staff gathered in the strategy room. Maps, timelines, packet traces, political networks, military exercises, everything they had. Alina stood before the screen, pointer in hand. Shadowline doesn't target individuals. They target pressure points, places where failure would cause maximum uncertainty. Thornton frowned. Like what? Supply chains, carrier readiness, diplomatic communications, domestic emergency systems. Anything that erodes trust. Winters leaned in. What's their next one? Alina hesitated. Her eyes moved across the map. Points of vulnerability. Recent anomalies. Cross-reference signals. Her pulse slowed. She saw it. A pattern so subtle most analysts would miss it. A curve already bending toward disaster. She tapped a location. Here. Mitchell froze. No. Winters sank back. Not that. Thornton whispered. The Arctic Expeditionary Line. Alina nodded. A naval convoy leaving in 48 hours. Carrying experimental satellite control hardware. Critical for missile defense. Critical for communication integrity. Critical for global stability. And Shadowline had already started the arc. They're not going to destroy the convoy, Alina said. They're going to compromise it. Thornton's eyes widened. And blame us. No, Alina corrected softly. They'll make us blame each other. Winters slammed her hand onto the table. Then we stop them. Alina shook her head. We can't stop the convoy. It's too visible, too political. And if we shut it down without evidence, they win. They'll say we overreacted, undermined readiness. It becomes a scandal, exactly what they want. Mitchell's voice dropped. Then what do we do? Alina looked around the room. Everyone staring at her. Everyone waiting. Everyone trusting her more than she trusted herself. She inhaled deeply. We don't stop the convoy. Thornton frowned. Then what? We intercept whoever plans to sabotage it. Winters froze. How? They're invisible. Alina's answer was quiet. Sharp. Certain. We make them visible. How? Alina turned toward the screen, a plan forming, a dangerous one that pulled on threads she hoped she'd never use again, one that demanded something she hadn't given anyone since her team died. Trust. We set a trap, she said. Mitchell studied her. What kind of trap? The kind Shadowline can't resist, she said. The kind they were trained to exploit. Her eyes darkened. A mistake. Later that evening, Alina stood alone again, this time on the bow of the ship, the wind tearing at her uniform, the ocean dark beneath her. Her mind churned. The ghosts of her past whispered. The weight of what was coming pressed down. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself a rare, private moment of truth. She was scared. Not of Shadowline. Not of failure. Not of the convoy. But of becoming the person she used to be. The operative who lived in anticipations and probabilities instead of humanity. She closed her eyes. Breathed deeply. Centered herself. Then she whispered to the wind. You won't take another team from me. And in the darkness, as if answering back, the ship's lights flickered once softly. As if something out there was listening. Why did the entire ship seem to inhale the moment Alina said the word bait? Because somewhere deep inside, everyone understood the truth. Traps don't just catch enemies. They reveal who people really are. The strategy room felt colder than usual, as if the ship itself was bracing for what Alina was about to propose. Winters folded her arms. Lieutenant, say that again. Alina didn't look up from the map she was drawing. An arc of projected influence, packets of prior anomalies, a timeline only she seemed able to interpret. We set a trap, she repeated, voice steady. We let Shadowline think they have a window into the convoy. We give them something irresistible, something they must interact with. Thornton frowned. That's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous, she replied softly. Mitchell stepped closer. What exactly are you offering as bait? This time she did look up. Me. The room went silent. Winters shook her head instantly. Absolutely not. But Alina continued calmly. Shadowline has a pattern. They prefer to exploit individuals who believe they're acting independently. They monitor for anomalies, behavioral shifts, access patterns. They're studying us right now. Thornton's jaw tightened. You're speculating. No, she said, tapping her tablet. I'm remembering. A faint tremor passed through her voice. Memory, not fear. Years ago, Shadowline used me as a test subject. I didn't know it then. I made one mistake, one small, technical decision they predicted I would make. They used it to bait the enemy group we were hunting, and that bait got my team killed. Mitchell's expression hardened. He had been holding his breath since the moment the symbol appeared. Now he understood why she reacted the way she did. Alina, he said gently, you don't owe the past your life. I owe my team the truth, she whispered. I owe this country the certainty it didn't give them, and I owe Shadowline something I didn't have back then. What's that? Winters asked softly. Her eyes hardened. Control. The next 12 hours were a blur of preparation. Alina worked with Lawson to build a false access pattern, a careful sequence of keystrokes, queries, and internal data requests that mirrored the exact behavior Shadowline preyed on. It was elegant, subtle, convincing. A digital heartbeat that would look like a vulnerable mind searching for answers, not a trap set by one of the smartest analysts in the Navy. At 300, Lawson leaned back in his chair with a sigh. This feels too real. It has to, Alina murmured. Meaning, you have to look compromised. Yes. He shook his head. Shadowline doesn't just track code, they track people, patterns, moods, behavior. His eyes softened. You'll need to act like you're slipping, like you're reliving what happened. She met his gaze with a rare flicker of vulnerability. I already am. Lawson's voice dropped. Alina, don't lose yourself in this. She didn't answer, because she wasn't sure she could promise that. By dawn, every thread was in place. The vigilance hummed with tension. Officers walked the passageways whispering theories, bracing themselves without knowing why. Even the ocean looked different, gray, restless, as if the sea itself was waiting. Alina stood by the railing, watching the first light break across the waves. Mitchell joined her quietly. You okay? Fine, she said. He tilted his head. Alina, look at me. She did. His eyes were steady, wise, the kind that had seen too many wars fought in quiet rooms. You don't have to prove anything, he said. Not to me, not to the Navy, not even to yourself. She looked back at the horizon. If I don't do this, who will? Silence. Then, I don't want to lose you, Mitchell confessed. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm not planning on going anywhere. But neither of them believed it completely. At 900, Phase 1 began. The ship's internal network lit up with fabricated anomalies, carefully placed packet trails, suspicious queries, unauthorized access attempts that were actually Alina's coded designs. She played the part perfectly, hesitating when she shouldn't, pausing at key nodes, opening files a step too slow, as if she were anxious, leaving traces of uncertainty in her digital footprint. To anyone watching, it would look like a brilliant but fragile officer cracking under pressure after the Trident incident. Hayes had created a weakness once. Alina was creating the illusion of one now. Afternoon passed. Evening came. No response. Thornton paced the strategy room. Are you sure they're watching? They're watching, Alina said. Shadowline always watches. They're patient, Mitchell muttered. They're calculating, Alina corrected. At 22:14, Mitchell insisted she rest. She shook her head. They'll wait until I'm tired, they always wait. But exhaustion crept in anyway, not physical, emotional. Because the trap demanded, she reopened wounds she'd sealed shut for years. She remembered the desert safe house. The blood, The static in her comms, the sudden silence, the realization she was alone. Her chest tightened. Lawson noticed. "Elena, take a break, that's an order." She didn't respond, because a small window on her screen had just blinked. 1 pixel, barely noticeable, but she saw it instantly. She straightened, pulse firing once, just once in her wrist. "They're here." Thornton froze, Shadowline. She zoomed in. An executable file she hadn't touched, a routine diagnostics check, the most boring, harmless script in the entire system. Only now it displayed a single extra line in the metadata. A signature. A greeting. "Hello, Lieutenant Rodriguez. We've missed you." Winters whispered, "Jesus." Mitchell leaned over her shoulder. "They're taunting you." "No," Elena said coldly. "They're confirming they took the bait." The screen flickered again. A second message appeared. "You're repeating the same behaviors as before. Are you sure you learned anything?" Her jaw tightened. Thornton cursed under his breath. "They're playing with you." "No," Elena said again, her voice low, shadowed. "They're confident." The room fell silent. Everyone watched her. Everyone waited. She hovered her finger above the keys. The next step was critical. Respond too fast and they'd know she was bait. Respond too slow and they'd escalate. Respond too confidently and they'd retreat. She had to answer with fear. But fear was something she didn't allow herself anymore. Her hand trembled. Mitchell saw it. "Elena." She typed, "What do you want?" 3 seconds later. "To finish what we started. Check your secure messages." A new file appeared. Encrypted. Locked. Dangerous. She hesitated, actual hesitation not performed. Mitchell touched her shoulder gently. "You don't have to open that." "Yes," she said quietly, "I do." She clicked. The file opened. Inside were 3 things. A name, a location, and a date. Her breath caught. Thornton stepped forward. "What is it?" Elena swallowed hard. "It's the convoy," she said softly. "They're not targeting the ships." "Then what?" Her eyes lifted slowly, filled with the kind of horror that only comes from recognizing a pattern too late. "They're targeting the escort aircraft." Winters froze. "The Arctic Patrol Wing." Elena nodded. "In 48 hours, they'll crash one of our planes." Thornton whispered, "Mechanical failure." "No." Her voice tightened to a razor's edge. "They're going to make it look like pilot error." Mitchell's hands clenched. Elena stared at the message, at the single, cold name in the file. A pilot she knew. A friend. Someone who trusted her. And someone Shadowline had already chosen as the scapegoat. "Elena," Winters whispered, "whose name is that?" Elena exhaled, slow, painful. "Captain Rhea Dalton." The room went silent. And in that silence, Elena realized something that made her stomach drop. Shadowline hadn't just taken the bait. They had laid their own trap inside hers. And she had walked right into it. Why did Elena feel colder reading Rhea's name than she ever did in the Arctic wind? Because betrayal isn't a temperature. It's a memory that freezes from the inside out. She stared at the file, the name pulsing on the screen like a wound. CAPT, Rhea Dalton. Arctic Patrol Wing Lead Pilot. Sabotage window, 48 hours. Her breath tightened. Rhea wasn't just a pilot. She was her pilot. The one who had flown Overwatch during an operation Elena never spoke about. The one who pulled her out of a kill zone after her team died. The one who refused to leave her behind. The one who trusted Elena when Elena didn't trust herself. And now Shadowline wanted to turn her into a scapegoat or a casualty. Alina's hands trembled, not out of fear but out of something deeper, something heavier, something she didn't allow herself to feel often. Guilt. Winters stepped beside her. "Lieutenant, talk to me." Alina swallowed hard. They're going to trigger a control failure mid-flight. A flap misalignment maybe, something tiny but lethal. Then they'll pin it on Rhea. Pilot fatigue, misjudged landing vector, something like that. Mitchell stiffened. Classic Shadowline misdirection. Alina nodded. A mistake engineered to look human. Thornton looked shaken. "How do we stop it?" Alina didn't answer right away. Because the truth hurt. Because the truth was already forming. Because stopping Shadowline meant revealing everything she had buried. Finally, she said it. "This isn't an attack on the convoy. It's an attack on me." Lawson blinked. "Why you?" "Because they know I'll do anything to save her." Mitchell's eyes softened. Shadowline always plays the long game. They draw you in, make you emotional, force your hand. Alina stared at Rhea's name, her pulse pounding. "They want me to intervene," she murmured, "to expose myself, to make them think they've cornered me." Winters shook her head. "Sounds like they already have." "No," Alina whispered, "they think they have." 2 hours later, Alina sat alone in her quarters, lights dim, door sealed. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if Shadowline's message still hovered there like smoke. She opened her old secure drive, one she hadn't touched since the desert incident years ago, a relic from her past, a ghost. Inside were the logs, the mission files, the unsent messages to the teammate who died. The last recording of Rhea screaming into comms for Alina to run before the world collapsed around them. She shouldn't have kept it. But she did. She clicked on the final file. Rhea's voice filled the room. "Ellie, move. I'm dropping smoke. I'm coming to get you." The blast cut her off. Alina closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. Rhea wasn't supposed to survive that day. But she did. Because she refused to leave Alina behind. And now Shadowline wanted to use that bond, twist it, break it. A soft knock at her door pulled her back. "Alina," Mitchell's voice, "we need to talk." She wiped her face quickly. "Come in." He entered quietly. He had never looked older or more worried. "You're not thinking clearly." "Yes," she said, steadying her voice. "I am." "No," he repeated softly. "You're thinking like the girl who survived Shadowline's first strike, not the strategist who beat them at Trident." She didn't reply. He sat beside her. "Alina, Shadowline's power isn't the sabotage. It's the narrative. If they make us doubt our own people, if they turn pilots against analysts, commanders against officers, they win." She whispered, "I won't let them break Rhea. And I won't let them break you." Her throat tightened. "Mitchell." He rested a hand on her shoulder. "If you walk into this emotionally compromised, they'll predict every step before you take it." "And if I walk away," she asked bitterly, "Rhea dies." He didn't answer. Because there wasn't an answer. Not one that didn't kill something inside her. By morning, Alina had a plan. A reckless one. A brilliant one. The kind Shadowline wouldn't expect. Winters ordered the command team to gather. Everyone looked exhausted. Everyone except Alina. Her calm was eerie. Thornton asked, "Lieutenant, what's our move?" She projected a schematic onto the screen. The Arctic Patrol Wing. The escort aircraft. The convoy route. Her voice was steady, too steady. "We're not going to stop the sabotage." Winter's eyes widened. "Alina. We're going to let it begin." The room exploded. "Are you insane? They'll kill her. This is playing into their hands." Alina raised her voice for the first time they'd ever heard. "No, this is how we catch them." Silence. Shock. Then she continued. Shadowline needs the failure to look natural, which means they need access to the aircraft's control network. If we cut their access before they act, they'll disappear. Mitchell exhaled, and we lose them. Yes, Elena said, but if we let them start the sabotage process, just the start, we can trace the injection route in real time, follow the relay path, find the operator. And Rhea, Thornton whispered. Elena's voice wavered. We'll keep her alive, but we need her in the air. Winters rubbed her forehead. This is insane. It's necessary. Mitchell watched her carefully. Elena, are you prepared to drag yourself back into that place? The mindset Shadowline preys on. She inhaled deeply. No, I'm not prepared. She lifted her chin. But I'm willing. 3 hours later, Elena walked into the Arctic hangar. Rhea Dalton stood by her jet, helmet tucked under one arm, radiant as always, confident in ways Elena never was. When Rhea saw her, she broke into a grin. Ellie, I heard you were on base, you ghost. Elena's throat tightened. Rhea. The pilot paused, picking up the shift instantly. Her smile softened. Hey, what's wrong? Elena wanted to lie. To protect her. To keep her away from Shadowline's next strike. But she couldn't. Your plane is compromised, she said softly. Shadowline is going to trigger a failure mid-flight. Rhea blinked. Shadowline as in your past. Elena nodded. Rhea set her helmet down and stepped forward. Ellie, look at me. Elena did. You're not losing me, Rhea said firmly. Not then, not now. Elena whispered, I don't want you to be part of this. Too bad, Rhea smiled. I'm your pilot, always have been. A crack formed in Elena's composure. A small, fragile human one. Rhea, I can't lose you. Rhea gripped her shoulders. Then don't fly this mission with me. Elena stared at her. You need me in the air, Rhea said gently. But I need you in the operations seat, talking to me, guiding me, breathing with me. Elena's voice broke. What if I fail you again? You won't, Rhea said, because you're not the same girl you were back then. Elena swallowed hard. And for the first time in years, she believed it. The mission began at 1500 hours. Rhea taxied down the runway. Elena sat in the operations booth, headset on, heart pounding. Mitchell and Winters monitored every packet of data. Thornton stood behind her, silent but steady. At 1507, Rhea lifted off. The sky swallowed her jet. Elena's voice cracked. Rhea, you're clear, I'm right here. Rhea's voice came through, warm and steady, right where you've always been. At 1510, Shadowline moved. A glitch in the Elevon actuator. A spike in the trim control. A pressure drop in the hydraulic line. Elena whispered, there, that's them, track it. Mitchell shouted coordinates. Lawson traced the injection route. Thornton watched the data jump from node to node. Shadowline accelerated. The failure deepened. The plane jolted. Rhea grunted, Ellie, something's wrong. I know, Elena whispered, I'm with you. The trace narrowed. One relay. One final hop. Winters gasped, we've got them. Elena stared at the screen. The signal wasn't coming from overseas. It wasn't coming from another state. It was coming from... Her breath froze. It's inside the base, she whispered. They're here. A figure stepped into the operations room. Slow. Calm. Unhurried. Mitchell's face drained of color. Elena. She turned and saw the last person she ever expected. Shadowline's handler. The architect. The ghost. Someone she trusted. Someone she knew. Someone who should not have been there. Hello, Elena, the figure said softly. The world fell silent, because betrayal wasn't an attack. It was a face she recognized. Why did the room feel smaller, tighter, when Alina faced the one person she had never learned how to fight? Because some enemies aren't foreign, or distant, or nameless. Some wear familiar voices. Some teach you everything you know. And some break you without ever raising a weapon. The operations room froze. Ria's voice crackled faintly in Alina's headset. Ellie, Ellie, talk to me. But Alina couldn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the figure standing in the doorway. A man with silver hair. Sharp eyes. A posture carved from decades of command. Colonel Daniel Mitchell. Not the Mitchell she trusted. Not the mentor who saved her career. The one beneath that. The architect. The handler. The ghost she had spent years outrunning. Shadowline's original strategist. Alina, he said softly, you were always going to return to this moment. Thornton reached for his sidearm. Mitchell didn't move. Only lifted a hand. Calm. Patient. Deadly. Please don't, he said. You wouldn't survive the next 3 seconds. Thornton froze. Not because of fear, but because Alina shook her head. She understood. Mitchell wasn't a threat because he had a gun. He was a threat because he understood every pattern, every instinct, every weakness of the people in the room. He had designed them. Why, she whispered, why did you do this? His face softened with something like sorrow, because Shadowline isn't treason, it's protection. Lawson shouted, you sold out your country. Mitchell didn't look at him. No, I saved it from itself. His voice was calm, too calm. Governments operate in cycles of fear, Alina. They make decisions reactively, emotionally. Shadowline creates predictability. We engineer controlled failures to prevent uncontrolled ones. That's manipulation, Winters snapped. That's stability, Mitchell corrected. Alina shook her head slowly. You killed my team. He inhaled almost regretfully. Your team died because they were unpredictable. Her breath hitched. He stepped closer, hands still visible, movement slow. Alina, you were the only one who understood, even back then. The only one who saw patterns. The only one who adapted instead of reacting. Thornton growled, you groomed her. Mitchell glanced at him. I refined her. Alina's heart hammered, but her voice stayed calm. You used me. I trusted you, he said, and I still do. She stepped back. He stepped forward. Shadowline doesn't target mistakes, he murmured. We create controlled narratives. We prevent wars by causing the right failures at the right time. And Ria, Alina hissed, what is she? A message, he said, a signal that you're ready to come back. Her hand trembled. He saw it and smiled sadly. You never moved on from what happened. You buried the pain, but the wound stayed open. Shadowline gives you control over the chaos that made you who you are. No, she whispered, Shadowline takes control. He tilted his head. What's the difference? The plane jolted violently through the comms. Ria's voice screamed through the headset. ELLI, I'm losing control. Alina snapped her eyes to the data stream. The sabotage was accelerating. Mitchell's plan was already unfolding. She had seconds. Alina, he said gently, let the plane crash. We'll fix the narrative. Ria will be honored as a hero who died saving the convoy. The country remains stable. You return to where you belong. Alina stared at him, stunned. You're asking me to sacrifice her. I'm asking you to save millions. He stepped closer. Just like I saved you. She felt something inside her break. Not fear. Not pain. Clarity. She lifted her chin. No. Mitchell blinked. What? You didn't save me, she said, voice trembling with strength she didn't know she had. You used me because I was broken, but I'm not broken anymore. Mitchell's expression flickered surprise, then disappointment. Elena, don't become emotional. I already am, she whispered. That's why I'm better than you now. She slammed 2 keys on the console. Mitchell lunged, but Thornton tackled him. Lawson grabbed the weapon from his jacket. Winters secured his wrist with a zip tie. Mitchell roared, "Elena, you don't understand." But Elena wasn't listening. Her world had narrowed to one voice. Rhea. LLIC can't, she's rolling, systems failing. Elena worked faster than she ever had. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, her mind a storm of precision. Rhea, listen to me, trim controls are spoofed. I need you to override manually. I'm trying. Mitchell shouted from the floor, she'll crash. The failure arc is already locked. Elena ignored him. Rhea, I need you to trust me. A shaky breath. You know I do. The plane dropped altitude. Screaming alarms. Hydraulic pressure plummeting. Control surfaces locked. Elena's heart thundered. Rhea, don't fight the roll, embrace it. What? Let the aircraft stabilizer complete its false correction. Don't resist. Let it dip. Rhea hesitated 1 fatal second. Elena, if this kills me. It won't, she said, more certain than she felt. I'm not losing you again. Rhea inhaled sharply. And let go. The jet rolled hard twice, then snapped back. Systems reset. Spoofed commands flushed. Hydraulic routing normalized. A miracle. Then, Elena, I've got control. Elena's breath broke into a silent sob. Thornton whispered, holy hell. Winters exhaled shakily. That was impossible. No, Elena whispered, just unlikely. Rhea's voice came softly through the headset. Ellie, I'm alive. Elena closed her eyes, tears slipping silently. Yes, she murmured, you are. Mitchell watched from the floor, furious, betrayed, defeated. Elena, you doomed everything. She looked at him, really looked. For years she had obsessed over what Shadowline stole from her. Her team. Her innocence. Her certainty. But now she saw what they never understood. Control wasn't strength. Emotion wasn't weakness. And vulnerability wasn't failure. It was humanity. She stepped closer to him, calm, grounded. No, she said softly, I saved what mattered. Your friend, he spat. She shook her head. Myself. Mitchell's face twisted. You'll never stop Shadowline. Elena stood tall. I don't need to stop them. I just need to expose them. Winters nodded, already calling security. And we will. Mitchell's eyes darkened. You think the truth will save you? Elena met his gaze. No, she said quietly, dignity will. The MPs dragged Mitchell away, shouting warnings she no longer listened to. Thornton stepped beside her. Lieutenant, what you did today. He shook his head. I'll never forget it. She said nothing. She didn't need praise. She needed air. She walked outside onto the deck. The sky was darkening. Wind cold. Waves restless. The world felt both heavier and lighter. Rhea's voice came through one last time. Ellie, come home. Elena closed her eyes. I will. She leaned on the railing, letting the wind wash over her. And for the first time in years, she let herself breathe. Not because the danger was gone. Not because the mission was over. But because she understood something she never had before. Strength wasn't defiance. Strength wasn't silence. Strength wasn't perfection. Strength was choosing humanity over control. Every single time. And in that quiet, fatting light, she whispered the story's final truth. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.